There's a lot of weird games that came out this week. The Pokemon Go competition was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I'm Jory, and with me as always we have...
I am Kainoa.
And this is the Hack and Chat podcast. You heard about how bad it was, right?
I heard that it was terrible. I heard that there was some networking issues.
They didn't set up any infrastructure, like, at all.
Ah, that would be the networking issue.
Yeah, they basically went to a park in Illinois, said this is where the event is, we're not setting anything up, but we totally expect all the cellular networks to be able to handle, like, thousands of people coming. And, of course, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, no one could get on. Lowball estimates are about 50% of people could play, but...
Which would be... Yeah,
an absolute
terrible
failure?
Yeah, I mean, it's an F. If you're going by, like, letter grades, like, 50% is solidly in the ballpark of an F.
Yeah. They ended up booing the CEO of Niantic when he came on stage, because it was like an hour after it started, and everyone's just waiting there. Apparently, there were huge lines to get in.
And then they...
Yeah. A couple of people on Reddit said that they had a list of things you're not allowed to bring in. Any sort of convention will have that. But they were, like, banning things that weren't on the list. Like, a couple of people had to, like, dump out their medicine. Like, prescription medicine. They even showed IDs and, like, with the bottle, and they're still like, you can't bring that in.
Isn't that illegal?
I don't think so, if it's a private event.
I don't think you're allowed to deny people their prescription medicine.
Either way, they did it. I don't know if anyone's gonna go after them for this, but...
Yeah, I doubt anyone would fight them on that after the fact. Yeah,
it was a complete shit show. A couple of people found out that they were actually, like, going through and changing the thresholds for certain, events that were supposed to happen. Because basically, the way it was structured, you went to the event, and the teams all competed, and after a certain amount of teams catching certain types of Pokemon, things would happen.
Okay.
So it kind of made sense that they were lowering thresholds when only 50% or less could play.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, they did it accidentally right on the screen. Like, their UI popped up. They tried to show a couple of videos from, like, community creators, and they couldn't get the audio working. It was a complete shit show.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I think Niantic shows all of the hallmarks of a company that got way too big, way too fast.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to manage their community, and I don't even know that I'm ready to blame them for it, so much as them just not... Like, how... If at most in the past, what does Ingress get on a daily basis as far as players? Less than 10,000 people?
Probably more, but around that ballpark.
Yeah, and as a result, like, if that's the market you're used to working within, especially for how long Ingress has been out and been kind of stagnant as a game in terms of player base, I could definitely see them being like, yeah, you know, public carrier networks are pretty good nowadays. We could definitely get by with that. And, you know, in the past, this style of things worked out, so I think we can do it again. And I think it's just they don't have the mind for how large Pokemon Go is.
I was in that same mindset until I started reading... I was really reading all the news stories about this. I haven't played Pokemon Go in forever, but we both know people who play it.
Yeah.
Even today.
Yeah, your girlfriend still plays it daily.
Yeah. And I was reading into it, and I found out Ingress had most of the same problems Pokemon Go did, with a much smaller player base.
Yeah.
Like, all their server outages, like, just crashing while you're trying to do something. These are, like, problems they were very aware of, and didn't fix at all.
Do you think it was maybe a case of, like, Pokemon Go was maybe never on the board for them, and then Nintendo reached out to them, and they were like, we cannot make the conscious effort not to take this deal.
Yeah.
And just went for it, and we're like, we're gonna have stumbling blocks, and there are gonna be things that we can't do because of who we are as a company and where our technology is right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to do it because...
Yeah, I mean, anyone in their right mind wouldn't be able to just not take up that offer.
And you know what's really weird, too? I was looking through all the... Because I have an Android phone. Mm-hmm. You have an iPhone, so
That doesn't work.
Well, I don't think this is true necessarily for you, but I was going through Android, and I was looking through all of the apps that it pre-installs, because I was trying to clear up space. One thing I dislike, a lot of them you can't uninstall. Like, I can't uninstall the NFL app, which sucks because it's wasted data. I will literally never open that app. I opened that app to try and figure out how to delete it. That was when I opened the app. But one of the apps that are pre-installed on Android that I physically cannot delete from my phone is Ingress.
Really?
It's among all these, like, NFL app and, like, YouTube app. Ingress. And I was so astounded. And I'd never known it was on my phone until I went looking. And it's just so strange, then, that wouldn't be bigger. Because you think, like, if there was tracking stats for Windows Solitaire, imagine how insane those numbers would be.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest problems with the Android phones. I won't say that iPhone doesn't have its fair amount of bloatware. You get like 20 apps in there. Most of them are useless, but they tend to be a lot smaller in size.
Yeah.
And I find they're a lot more polished. At least when I had I think a Samsung Galaxy for like a year. All of the bloatware apps on there were basically unusable. Like there were the standard Android apps, and then there like I had Samsung and Google apps just thrown on top of there.
I don't think I have any Samsung apps. Which is that the Samsung logo?
No, that's Motorola.
Motorola. Okay, so I don't have a Samsung. Maybe that's a Samsung specific issue.
Yeah, which might be a problem with the entire like structure of Android, the ability to put bloatware on there so easily. I mean, I guess it's the same argument of PC versus Mac.
And I mean, the thing is ultimately, if I decided I really didn't want that bloatware and I wanted to get rid of it, I'd install a new shell on my phone.
Yeah.
And I can do that, and I don't have to, it doesn't void any warranties, and it doesn't, like, mess with my carrier if they find out. Yeah. I can still send it in the shop to get fixed, because they have no issue with me doing that. Which is why I like Android, because it's basically a power user's phone. One of the first things I did was install a PSP emulator and play Danganronpa.
Yeah, I know that when I had my Android, I was in a college course, and I was super bored because it was something I already understood, and I just decided to play Majora's Mask in class.
Yeah.
And, like, half of the class just gathered around me and like, are you playing Majora's Mask right now?
Obviously, what else would I be doing? Listening to the class?
Yeah.
This is a computer science major class. We don't need to listen. We've just got to be better.
There were a few people who probably should have been listening to that lecture.
Yeah.
So Dream Daddy just came out. Have you heard of that?
You know, it exploded all over every feed I have, and I was like, what the fuck?
I didn't know that the Game Grumps were making it.
I heard that the Game Grumps made it.
They were publishing it. They've got their own in-house studio now.
That apparently makes dating sims where you have sex with people's dads. Is there sex in the game?
I haven't seen that far. I've been watching a couple of different Let's Players play it, but it's still so new that they haven't gotten their new stuff out.
Because it's a dating sim.
Yeah.
So I assume, therefore, that there are sexual elements.
It seems more wholesome than other games. Than other dating sims.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Given the premise.
But, like, have you seen any of the videos of it?
No, I haven't. I've literally just seen, like, the cover art that's two really huge lumberjack-looking dudes in, like, really tight t-shirts.
So you're a dad.
Okay.
And you have your own daughter. She's a senior in high school. And you actually, when you're meeting the other dads, you end up meeting their daughters or sons as well. And that becomes, like, an integral part of, like...
developing with them as a person.
Yeah, and you kind of have to develop with the kid as well as with the father.
Which is kind of a cool idea. I like that.
There's a bunch of, like, references to other video games. Like, one of the early, things you do is you have to do a Pokemon-style fight, where you're bragging about your children.
I was hoping you were like, go, daughter, go beat the shit out of that kid. My daughter could beat the shit out of your kid.
Yeah, that'd be an entirely different game.
I'd play that game.
I'm pretty sure there's a ROM hack for Pokemon Emerald that's like that.
I know there's a ROM hack for Pokemon Emerald that makes all the Pokemon into Tuhus.
Yeah, so... that might be the one I'm thinking of. But it's a really neat game. Like, I normally don't like the dating sim genre very much. I find it kind of boring.
I'm super hit or miss on it. Because, the first one I played was Kainoa Shoujo, which, despite sounding Japanese, was actually one of the first English-developed dating sims. It was actually developed by 4chan over the course of 10 years. And it is a dating sim, and I'm not making this up. It's a dating sim where you date crippled girls. Like, there's deaf girl, there's girl with no arms, there's blind girl. But it's literally... It is one of the better pieces of writing that I've ever read. Which is impressive for just some random group of internet people.
Yeah.
Throwing something together. The art's good on it. They did all their own music. They wrote their own engine for it. It's like kind of an edifice to like the internet just kind of buckling down and doing something weird.
Have there been any like solid dating sims that have made it big that didn't just have a weird gimmick though? Like I don't know what that says about a genre that can only like last on gimmicks.
Not in America. In Japan, it's a little different. For example, anybody who's watched any of the Fate anime, like Fate Stay Night, Fate Apocrypha, Fate Zero, all of those are based on a dating sim. Like a super, super porny dating sim.
Weird. I would have thought that'd be the other way around.
No, yeah, the dating sim was Fate Stay Night, which ended up being the first anime, I think. And it's part of, like, this huge sprawling series, and people, like, take it really seriously. Like, they're into the, like, lore of it, which is interesting because it's something I don't think that would happen as readily in the West.
Yeah.
That, like, something would come up that, at its core, is basically, call it NC-17 if you're not ready to call it a porn game. And then say, now it's getting 3 cartoons, a bunch of spin-off graphic novels, and people would just be really uneasy about that, I think, in the West.
I feel like the best thing to relate that to would be like Yandere Simulator, and even that's based in Japanese culture. Well,
yeah, and I mean, when they made Kadoa Shoujo, it's set in Japan.
Yeah.
I think that even when Western devs, like, head out of the American wheelhouse to try and do a dating sim in the Japanese style, they still have to cling to the, like, inherent, I guess, weebiness of it, because no one else is willing to accept it, which I belager as someone who would love to just kind of not have limits as far as right now. If I wanted to write something that was super anime, like as a writer, I would have to buy entirely into that style. I couldn't like westernize it, I feel like.
Which might be a good reason to check out the Dream Daddy, because it is Western, like at its core. It's all Western characters.
The art style's very Western. Yeah, that's a good point. It might be worth looking at for that reason. And this might tie back into something else that you said recently, and I don't know if you said this on the podcast. You asked me, you challenged me even, to come up with a Western cartoon that wasn't a comedy. And I could not do it. And I'm wondering if that's the same situation we've run into here, where they were like, we want to make this kind of thing inspired by something that's very Japanese, so we're going to Americanize it, but we're going to make it a comedy. And that's going to smooth over all those rough edges.
Yeah, you get a lot more free reign when you can do a comedy.
Yeah,
because people
because
just expect anything to happen.
Yeah, they're like, whatever, absurdism. Like, if you wanted to make Rick and Morty like a completely serious drama, so much of it would fall apart. From a storytelling perspective, because you wouldn't be as willing to suspend, like, why is there the farting ass world? Yeah. Like, why does that exist?
Well, then we get into, like, a chicken and egg sort of argument of, did the floating ass world happen because it's absurdist, or did that happen because it's a comedy?
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I think maybe directors like Guillermo del Toro?
I
can't do anything. Yeah. Or, the guy who makes Twin Peaks?
David Lynch.
Kind of get into a nice little territory, not doing cartoons, but getting that absurdism without necessarily comedy.
Yeah.
But they are niche films for a reason.
Tarantino. Oh my god, all of Kill Bill.
Yeah. I would... Yeah. I when I watch those kind of movies, I see them as somewhat having comedy elements, which might just be my own personal... I also saw Preacher as having comedy elements, which you disagree with.
Which, I mean, it has comedy elements. Like, Cassidy... Okay, let's not get into Preacher, because
Yeah.
this isn't a film podcast. You should watch Preacher. The first season's good. I can't speak for the second season. I haven't seen it yet.
Second season's pretty good. It's not hitting as hard.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's also still early in the season, so, you know.
Yeah.
Destiny pre-orders just had a weird thing happen. So Best Buy has a thing with Destiny where if you pre-order the game, you can get a beta key to play it early. It's a thing a lot of shooters are doing lately.
Yeah.
But a lot of people were super angry about the beta.
Well, it's an MMO, so people would be really wanting to get in early and get started towards their grind, right? Is that the issue?
The issue was that people were finding the combat super boring.
Oops.
Yeah. Apparently all the enemies barely had, like, any creative AI. All the fights just felt like shooting at things. Which...
Is this a primarily PC complaint?
No.
No. Interesting, because my first thought was maybe the console people were a little more okay with that, and PC now expects more from our MMOs.
No, this is most of the consoles having this problem right now.
Interesting.
It seems like there's just a lot of
How
stuff
can you
stripped
take
out.
a step backwards?
It happens all the time in games.
It does, but, like, the whole point of Destiny 2 was we're gonna improve those things in Destiny 1 that were problematic.
Yeah, well... developers make cop-out games all the time.
I guess. It's just... I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't expect Bungie to phone it in.
Yeah.
I expected them to, like...
Is it Bungie or 343?
It might be 343. I know that Bungie made Destiny 1, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
I just assumed that it was Bungie again. That could be an explanation right there if it changed studios.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, since people are so angry about the beta, they started, returning their pre-orders or canceling them, and they started charging people to cancel them. $20 to cancel a pre-order.
Jeez.
Apparently it was a mistake, but it doesn't feel like it when you're getting something.
That doesn't feel like a mistake, honestly.
It seems like maybe you should just charge people, like...
Are you allowed to charge people for returning a product?
I don't know, but if you view it as getting a deposit on something, maybe?
If it's legally a deposit, yeah, you could totally say you breached an implicit contract, and therefore we're going to charge you. I know the UK is a lot more stringent about consumer protection laws. I would be interested to hear if this kind of stuff's happening outside the US.
Yeah, UK and Australia are both big about that.
Yeah.
I've been reading about it a lot lately because it's coming, but the Oculus store apparently only returns games if you're in the UK. Which has been pissing a lot of people off because a lot of those games tend to be kind of glitchy or not work on a system entirely.
Which, honestly, if I'm buying a VR game, unless I, like, go to the Steam page and it's, like, literally no bugs, 10 of 10 on every review, I'm gonna assume it's gonna be a little glitchy because it's just such a new technology that of course it's glitchy.
I still think that I completely agree with these people that say that if a game doesn't work on your system, you should be allowed to return it.
If it doesn't work on your system, fair enough. If you're like, my hand clipped into a thing when I tried to grab it, fuck you.
I know this is a little early to bring up games we've been playing, but I had the worst fucking time playing a game this week.
Okay, we'll get to it.
Do you want to get to it now?
We can go to games we played. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Atelier Sophie. Or Atelier Sophie.
Atelier.
I could not get that fucking game to work on my computer.
Really?
So, most of the time when I play games, I've become kind of accustomed to having to go search for a setting file and change things.
Yep.
It's most of the big AAA games I've played in the last couple of months have been like that.
Yeah.
Especially I've noticed with the 720p monitor, it's like games aren't
built for 720p anymore.
Yeah.
I know that even I don't even know necessarily what my monitor resolution would be termed as. I guess 900p because I'm literally 1600 by 900.
Yeah, that'd be
900p, which is just such a strange resolution, and I do occasionally have issues where games are like, we don't know what to do with that. I've had games that will actually like show at 720p and just black out like the bottom corner. It's really weird. It's not like all around it. It'll do like the bottom corner.
That's annoying.
That's really annoying. I had to fix that. Normally I fix it by downscaling.
Mm-hmm. But, so I ended up, like, going through and, like, so I was getting a black screen when I started Atelier Sophie, which is normal. I finally find the settings file.
Which is normal.
Yeah. And I find out that basically the settings files do nothing. So they've got, like, a weird exterior, like, settings program that you can use, and it's awful. It's got, like, 3 settings in it. It's, like, resolution,
well, that's a Japanese game, isn't it?
Or full screen. Yes.
Japanese titles are known for having really poor PC ports.
Well, they live fucking up, because I finally get that going, and none of my controls work.
Oh.
So, like, first thing you see is, like, a long-ass cutscene.
And then your controls don't work, so you have to watch the cutscene again.
Yeah.
Every time you want to test.
Fucking every time I wanted to test. I finally figure out... Well, I keep going. You get to the screen that says press any key.
Yeah.
And so, like, my controls aren't working to skip this thing, so I like, go out. I'm trying to play with controller, because it's a console game.
You like
originally,
controller.
And yeah. And so I'm, like, pressing every button. The controller's just not working, so I, like, unplug it, whatever. I start using keyboard, none of that's working. I finally figure out that to get out of the press any key screen, you have to press 0.
Specifically?
Specifically the 0 key. So I finally figured that out. Everything's kind of vaguely working. There's one thing that annoyed me. I went into the settings menu in-game, and there's like 10 settings. They're like nothing to write home about. It's kind of missing a bunch of shit. Except on the bottom it says complete settings. So I click that and it gets me out of there. That button meant you're done with the settings. They're complete. Not like look at the complete settings of the game.
Yeah, poor translation in option menus is a recurring problem.
So I finally just go into the game. I'm like, whatever, I'll figure it out. The game is absolutely meant for controller. All of the control schemes they show you are told in controller. You can't do half of the things on the keyboard. Just random things are bound to random things. There's no, like, change your bindings in the game. And I can't get the controller to work.
Yeah.
I quit. I played for, like, 10 minutes trying to figure it out. I couldn't move the camera, so I could only walk in 4 directions.
So, did you get your money back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not worth it. Apparently there's a beta that
maybe fixes
it, but I couldn't get it to work.
Oh, good.
So
your fix is broken.
Yeah.
Oops.
So it was, which sucked because I love the art style of those games. Like
they're all really pretty.
Anime 3D style.
Yeah.
It's got like full on animated cutscenes with pretty decent voice acting in both American and Japanese, English and Japanese rather. And
all this is making me think of is Valkyria Chronicles.
That seemed to work though.
Valkyria Chronicles works. I'm saying like anime cutscenes, 3D anime art style, really pretty. And that's just a better game. So maybe what you're telling me is that you want to play.
No,
Valkyria
what I'm telling
Chronicles.
you is I want to play the goddamn DS version again.
I still have that cart. Do you want it back?
I'm not going to end up playing. I'm just really salty right now about it. Yeah, that was... I played some other games, but I just had to bring that up because we were talking about shit not working at all.
Yeah.
Ugh. Awful. Don't play that game. Don't buy that game. Don't give them your money. It might work on console.
I would imagine it does.
Get it there. Get it on PS4. If you like that sort of thing. I don't even know what it's really about because I didn't get far enough.
Yeah.
The story seemed the same as all the other games of that series.
You are a young girl whose parent is estranged for one reason or another. You must watch the shop while they are gone. Cue antics in anime.
Bingo. That's the first 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even need to play it. You can just tell me how it goes.
I'll tell you the end, too. At the end, either her father comes back, or they acknowledge that he's dead forever, or they never acknowledge his existence again.
That one seems more likely.
And just, like, push their romance subplot.
Speaking of weird anime games, Girls und Panzer.
Girls und Panzer.
Not Panzer Maidens.
Not Panzer Models, which was the weird... once again, Western developed,
Tank Dating Simulator.
Tank Dating Simulator. No, you're talking about Girls und Panzer, the huge hit in Japan about teenage girls driving tanks in the far distant future where everybody lives on aircraft carriers.
What the hell is going on with this game? Why are tanks suddenly, like, the big thing?
Well, they've been big in Japan for a while, and it's actually mostly because of Girls und Panzer.
Really?
Girls und Panzer came out a few years ago, and it was really big. Basically, what I explained was correct. Like, the premise was a bunch of high school girls start a tank club, because all of the high schools have tanks, and they basically, it's obviously written, so it's supposed to be like, tank is kind of like their equivalent of like kendo, which is like the Japanese sword fighting clubs. So it's supposed to be like heavily like rooted in Bushido. So there's like honor codes and stuff.
All of that just went over my head.
Yeah. It's a little weird, but and then all of them are on aircraft carriers for some reason. Like their entire country is on an aircraft carrier.
Well, Japan's kind of small. Not a lot of places for tanks.
Yeah, I guess. And then they go fight their tanks against other high school girls, which is weird because I was like waiting for the episode where somebody's cannon gets stovepiped and everybody dies. Like,
wait, episode? Is this an anime?
It was an anime originally.
Oh, okay.
It might have been a manga before that.
It is a video game now.
I haven't actually heard at all about the video game.
It just came out.
Is it good?
I don't know.
I will have to try it because the anime is fun.
It only came out in Japan so far, because
obviously.
But it looks like every other tank game with just anime girls strapped to the top of your tank.
Yeah. The anime is fairly character driven. Like, there are a lot of tank battles, and there is actually a moment where they drift a tank through a city, which is just a grade A scene. They're, like, rolling around in the city trying to be quiet, and the enemy tank just drifts around the corner and shoots them. It's real good.
Oh my god. I don't get it. I like...
Imagine you are the kind of person who goes in for that super moe, like, anime girls doing anime girl things.
Yeah.
And you also really, really like, a lot of those people are into gunpla, which is like, in Japan, guns are like super restricted, but so they have this kind of like cult following. Like, there are people who really like learning about guns and like military history.
Right.
So imagine that those two just kind of collided.
Okay.
And it's like the perfect storm if you think about it. People who like anime girls are drawn in by anime girls. People who are more on the tank side of things are still drawn in because it's a little more acceptable in Japan to watch girls in cartoons and not have that be weird as an adult. And the combination of those two is just something so rare.
Yeah, I suppose.
It took off because then they had Apote, which was about girls who are guns. And they had actually even before that they had Strike Witches, which was girls who are fighter planes and don't wear pants and have cat ears.
Okay. I don't even know how to respond to that.
That one won a bunch of awards that year for being really good, and is actually the first one is a stellar anime. It's just really weird. You're like, are they gonna explain why everybody has cat ears and doesn't wear pants? No? Okay, whatever.
There's a guy, and I've only heard stories about him from a friend, but apparently there's like a small coders club that a friend has, and one of the guys inside of it 3D models, like, really well. Like, he spends a lot of time doing it, the 3D models come out really good, but he only models tanks. Like, explicitly historically accurate tanks.
He should just send a portfolio to the guys who make, what is it? World of War tanks or whatever. And just be like, hey, give me a job. I'm literally only qualified for this.
I've been waiting to see. I keep asking for pictures of these 3D models because I want to see
if they're good. Tanks. It's like, probably somebody's gonna be like, we need a tank modeler, and this guy's gonna be like, I am your guy, and I only work for vast amounts of money.
Yeah. moving on from girls in tanks.
Moving on from
Because I
girls
don't
and
think
pencils.
I could say
You just-
anything more about it.
You
I'm
just brought it
perplexed.
up. You were like, "Oh, what is this thing?" And I was like, "Let me drop some weeb knowledge on
I
you."
needed it explained to me because I had no idea. So I
Yeah.
was kind of aware that people were super into World of Tanks or whatever.
Yeah.
But fucking anime girl tanks. There's dating sims and games and
Yeah.
animes and movies and.
Oh yeah, the movies are not good.
I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
I had an idea. So every once in a while I come up with weird ideas and forget about them and just write them down in a notebook and see them later. And I
Go,
try.
oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, wow, what the
I
fuck?
had an idea for a game.
Okay.
I want 5 Gum to make a VR game.
What it's like to chew 5 gum.
Yes! I want to know what it's like!
Or you could just buy a pack of 5 gum.
It doesn't seem that way though. Like in all the commercials, there's like people like sitting and there's like speakers everywhere and they're floating. I want to know what it's like to be in the mind of someone who knows what it's like to chew 5 gum.
I mean, I would kickstart it for $5.
Dope. I think that's winning the competition so far of things you will kickstart. I've got like 10 cents out of you, and
I gave you $10 for something.
Oh, okay.
Something I was like, I would pay $10. I think actually that one might have been, I will pay you $10 not to make that. So yeah, $5 might be your winning bid so far.
Dope. All right, I'm gonna contact them up. Get them, tell them, hey,
Somebody
I'm a game
will
dev.
give you $5.
Just start like giving it away in Burger King meals or something.
That would be how you do it. Nobody's gonna buy the 5 gum game.
Give them loot crates.
It's not like the Rick and Morty game.
Yeah, those are doing really well.
Which is weird, because apparently there's very little content. It's kind of buggy.
Are you talking about the VR one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a short game, and it's kind of expensive, but
It's
that
kind
seems
of
to be
expensive.
where VR is right now.
And honestly, as long as it's really clear,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with games being short.
Yeah.
Especially VR games, because once again, early adopters are kind of going to get screwed on that one.
But it seems like most people are buying that game to just hear Justin Roiland's voice.
Which might be true as well.
Yeah,
I just brought it up because I know people have issues with it.
people are obsessed with it too, though. Like, there's a
Yeah.
YouTube channel that explicitly posts content from that game.
Really?
Yeah.
What do they do? Just stand around and wait for people to give dialogue?
They went through every single permutation of the VR in VR game. The one where you go
I
through...
have no idea. But all I have seen is the banner ad on Steam. And heard that people are angry about it.
In one of the Rick and Morty episodes, they go to Blitz and Chips.
Yep, Blitz and Chips.
Live out Roy's life.
Oh my god, is Roy in the game?
No, it's a Chinese knockoff called Troy. Everything is made out of cardboard.
That's so Rick and Morty.
Yeah. He went through every permutation of that. There's a machine in the game where you can mix items.
And he's mixing every single object.
Everyone.
Yeah.
He's gonna run out of content. And his channel's
He's gonna
die.
run out of
I think his
content.
channel might have already died by now.
Honestly, if that was me, I'd be like, okay, what other VR games are there? I'm just gonna play every VR game and do everything.
It sucks because not a lot of them are open-ended like that.
Some of them
Where
are.
Yeah.
What
there's
about, like, Job Simulator?
Job Simulator
has
is a good
a lot
one,
of
but
stuff?
everyone's already done that.
Everybody's already
It's so
done that.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Accounting, Justin Roiland's other game is really neat. It's not open-ended, but it's a pretty cool story to go through. It's like meta working in an office while also playing in VR Simulator. It's strange.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really like that he's got his own company going now, though. I hope to see more shit out of that.
Yeah. Do you think season 3 will be the last season of Rick and Morty?
I don't know.
Because I could see that happening and then him moving on and just, like, doing other weird side projects.
Most people tend to say when it's their last season coming up, though. Unless they don't
Yeah,
know.
but to be fair, most people also, like, release things on time and, like, communicate with the audience in a timely manner.
Mr. Poopy Butthole at the end of season 2 said, we'll see you again in like a year and a half. And exactly a year and a half later, they posted the first episode.
Which then we got radio silence forever. So I don't know that that's necessarily fair. It's like, we totally released on the day. Yeah, you released. That's like if a game was like, this is the day we're coming out, and it came down to that day, and all that was out was the demo, and they were like, hey, it's out.
Oh, No Man's Sky, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A week before, we're delaying this.
Because it's not even close to done, to be honest.
Oh my god, the community's split again right now. So the
Forgiving and not forgiving.
alternate reality game was going really well.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, I think we completed it. Like,
Yeah, I heard that
we got
it's
to the
over.
end, we got a message from Sean Murray, and then everyone could sign up for a newsletter saying that we'd get the 4th level Atlas key, which is like a thing that opens doors and shit in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone put in their stuff, and only like a certain amount were supposed to be given out. But instead of just giving shit out,
Mm-hmm.
we got a whole bunch more emails, and there's a new ARG starting. So it's still going. Which is better than radio silence that everyone thought it was going to be.
It's also a lot more effort than radio silence.
Yeah.
It's like they planned to do another ARG.
It's a crazy amount of work going into all of this. And
And
they
not
hired a
into the
company to do it. So they're supposedly still working on the game.
Supposedly they were working on the game in the first place, too, and we saw how that turned out.
Yeah.
Zing.
Got him. But they're hiring a different company, so at least they're not taking man hours away from their team to do it.
Yeah, that's true in theory.
Yeah.
But, like, then you have to think, like, the writer probably has to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to think,
I don't
well,
think they have a writer.
it's also possible. They might just have a guy who happens to write the dialogue when he gets to it in his code.
The ending of that game is a tongue-in-cheek reference that the entire game was a simulation. Which, no shit, it's a simulation.
Yeah.
It's a video game!
Yeah.
Supposedly they hired a new writer to... I don't know what's going on. No one knows what the fuck's going on at Hello Game.
Which is a huge issue with that studio.
We do know that they're now publishing new games, though. They're taking all that money and they're funding smaller devs.
Oh, well, that's a good use for it.
Yeah.
I'm always for that.
It's like workaround crowdfunding.
Hey, side note, kind of similar. Do you remember what ended up happening with the... Remember when Extra Credits had a publishing studio?
Yeah,
Did that go anywhere?
I don't know. I think they're still working on games, but I haven't heard anything for a long time.
Yeah.
The problem with, like, announcing you've got a new publishing studio is...
It means you're 5 years out from producing any content?
Or you're gonna overhype your game by talking about it way too early.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll see how... Oh! Aren't they Tiny Build?
Is that Tiny Build? That would make a lot of sense.
I don't... Yeah, you can look that up while I get into the next story. Blizzard is now discontinuing support for Windows XP.
I mean, yeah. At this point, yes, everybody loved XP when it was the brilliant, shining child of a new era. But XP has been depreciated by Microsoft for, what, half a decade now?
Yeah.
So yeah, if Blizzard wants to stop supporting... To be fair, they only stopped support... They put out a Windows 95 update for, like, Diablo 2, like 6 years ago. So, whatever. Blizzard tends to have legacy support.
That's crazy, though. Like,
Yeah.
did it last longer than the company who's making it with support? Because I'm assuming that extends to all of their games. Even the new card game, Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
New card game, the game that's been out for several years.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird time to give out that news, though. I wonder if they're planning on releasing something soon.
Honestly, given the history of how Blizzard does patches,
Mm-hmm.
it could literally be that, internally, they've been working on patches for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and just now some software guy went to his head of department and went, yeah, we're not gonna do an XP version anymore. And the head of department was like, that's reasonable, I trust you. And just put out because, there was a Diablo 2 update last year.
Mm-hmm.
Diablo 2 came out in
Yeah.
2000.
Well,
And it was an update. They were like, yeah, we're just fixing, like, things didn't quite work on Windows 10. We wanted to just kind of punch it up and make it function a little better. And it's like, good on you, Blizzard, but you don't have to.
well, Half-Life 1 got an update like a week ago.
Yeah. So, I think it's literally just a fact of, like, there was no good time to announce you're dropping support for Windows XP, so whenever is fine.
Steven Universe is getting a new game. Full-style RPG, JRPG, on the Xbox and PS4.
Which seems to be something that, that Cartoon Network likes to do.
But they tend to be awful.
Which is also true.
They've been releasing Adventure Time games for a long time, and they're all really awful Zelda-style knockoffs.
Yeah. Which is sad, because I would like some good Zelda games.
Yeah. Well, what you want from Zelda might be dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I acknowledge that. But it's... Okay. And we'll come back to your point. Why? Why is 2D Zelda dead? Why?
I thought you liked 3D Zeldas more.
I like both for different reasons. And yes, I acknowledge that the time of the 3D Zelda game is basically done, especially since...
As far as what you want from it.
As far as what I want from it. Like, Darksiders did something a little similar and ultimately panned because of it, so that was kind of the nail in the coffin there. But why do no studios make, like, 2D Zelda-likes? Like, there was Anodyne, there was It'll Do, and that's it!
The problem is it seems to be an indie thing to do, because one, it's really low resources to make.
Is that even
but
an indicator? Like, 2 games? Can you think of any other 2D Zelda?
There's a bunch of free ones. On like,
are there?
Or like $1 ones on Indie Gala. But they don't tend to get big, which I think might just be because of its simplistic controls and the... When you've got a control scheme that's so simplistic, you have to make it perfect. Like, feel great.
Yeah.
And a lot of those, like, $1 indie games don't get that great feeling across. But going back to Steven Universe, they had a JRPG on the phone for a long time. And it's a pretty decent phone JRPG. It's simple. You go from, like, room to room. Kind of original Zelda style where you, like, transfer around. There's some basic loot and then just simple, like, 3-on-3 or 3-on-a-boss JRPG fighting.
Okay.
The problem with the new game that I see is it looks no different from the phone game. And it's supposed to be a $60 title.
Yeah, that's kind of a rough sell.
Yeah.
What's it on PC?
Xbox and PlayStation.
Yeah, that's a rough sell.
Yeah. Which I'm kind of disappointed by, because, like, they've shown that they can do so much, and they didn't try and push themselves.
Which ultimately is maybe a good thing, because maybe it means they didn't overextend. But at the same time, if you don't make an effort to put yourself out there, you're gonna produce really mediocre games.
Yeah. I'm having trouble seeing a reason that I should buy that over the free phone game.
And that's very true.
Which is kind of a bummer, because their games are fun.
Yeah.
Ish. Adventure Time's still garbage. Which, that's always kind of been like a thing in TV video games.
It very much has.
They don't put a lot of effort into it. It's just, like, you recognize these characters, so it'll sell some.
Yeah, they're mostly gauged at children, too, who have a much lower barrier to entry in terms of grabbing their attention. I remember being a kid and I would play, like, the Madagascar, like, Game Boy Advance
Those
game.
ones are legitimately good.
Are they?
I replayed that, like, a year ago. Actually, I never played it before. I found... Danielle was selling me on it. Like, she's like, this is a game you play as the penguins from Madagascar, and I played it all the time in my childhood, and I'm like, that sounds dumb. This sounds awful. There's no way this holds up. And I spent an afternoon playing it, and I beat it.
Was that, you're talking about penguins, though? There was also one where you just played as the animals.
I heard that one is awful.
That one is quite bad. But as a kid, I was like, this is pretty okay. It's like Donkey Kong Country, except I don't suck at it. Which was because it was dirt easy. It was like, there may have been enemies, but, like, ultimately it was one of those games where you just kind of walk through the platformer.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if someone should make, like, a small collection of the weird old Game Boy games that shouldn't hold up but do. And I want to put Penguins right at the top of that list.
Penguins.
It shouldn't hold up, but it totally does.
What else is like that?
Shrek Racing.
Shrek Racing, really?
For the Game Boy Advance.
And I guess people would argue that Sneak King should be on there, because apparently Sneak King is good.
I never played that, and I don't think I ever will. But
I
can't
never
imagine.
will.
That's just got to be novelty, right?
I mean, I would say that about the Madagascar Penguins game. So
It's got
you
an
know.
amazing racing part where you slide on your belly. And it's actually legitimately fun while you try and get all the coins. Like, it controls really well. It's awesome.
That's cool.
Speaking of... Oh, you got something?
I will just finish up on one of our last points. I cannot find a connection between Tiny Build and extra credits.
Okay.
So I don't believe that is them.
Speaking of old games, someone just made an awesome mod for Super Mario 64. They made Super Mario Maker 64.
Oh, that's fun.
And in the game, it's kind of clunky because you still have to play it using a Nintendo 64 controller
Yeah.
or emulate it using...
And it's still on the system, so ultimately...
But, like, you actually can, like, place and, like, expand blocks, and you make full-on Mario 64 levels.
That's cool.
Which is kind of awesome. People have been modding that game for a long time. Like, there have been level packs and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's kind of accessible to people, I think.
Definitely, I think... Can you save or
You
export?
Can't export, which is a big problem with it.
That is, yeah, a problem. Because if you could export, like, I could see people making entire games.
You can save file, but, like, then you have to transfer a save file, and that's emulator specific.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe... I hope they figure that out.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, it's hard because it's coming from the Nintendo 64 console.
Yeah, ultimately the console would probably have to, like, write a ROM or something, which would be insane.
Yeah. Which, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
People have been getting crazy. Apparently the Xbox emulator now works with Demon Souls, or the PlayStation emulator.
Ooh.
Xbox?
It would be a
PS3.
PlayStation.
Okay. So the PS3 and the original Xbox emulators are really coming along.
Which I didn't expect to happen, honestly. I expected that those projects were kind of dead.
Yeah, a lot of people did, and then just out of nowhere, like, all at once they started happening.
Which actually is interesting because, there was recently another emulator that released that nobody ever thought was going to come out. And it was like, I think it's like a Game Gear emulator or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an ancient hardware that somebody's like, yeah, now we have an emulator for it. It works.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the more emulators we can get, I know the companies don't
especially
appreciate
on
them.
older stuff.
Yeah.
Like, who owns an Xbox anymore, honestly?
Yeah.
And if you do, it's in the back of your closet. You don't know if it works anymore.
Most people got rid of their Xboxes when the 360 came out, and now there's the One X.
Yeah, now there's the One and then the One X.
Yeah.
So we're 2.5 console cycles up on the Xbox.
Have you heard anything about the Switch's new voice chat?
I heard that no one wants to use it.
It's awful. It's like the most garbage thing. You have to use it through a phone.
Oh, yeah, and it requires like a whole bunch of extra cords and dongles to get working.
You can do it with just your phone. However, they did add a separate headset if you want it. It's Splatoon themed, and it's kind of garbage.
Oh.
And it's like super expensive, and it's the only official one.
Yeah, because that's how Nintendo does it.
It's actually third party. It's like licensed.
Really?
Yeah. Which is one of the reasons I think it's going to be, or it is super
Janky? Yeah.
poo-poo. Slime Rancher just left early access, or is leaving on the 1st of the month.
Are they going to get another update?
I don't know.
Because they just got, like, what I thought was their final update. Not their final update, but their coming out of early access update. Because I actually played that. I think we talked about that on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Did we?
Yeah.
Maybe, like, episode 1 or something?
You said that, like, it needed more content still. Like, the desert was completely empty.
It's not completely empty. It's just fairly empty.
That game's been in development for a long time, though. I think it's good that it's finally leaving early access.
And I, like, ultimately, I think the core reason that game's good is that the dev said, I'm going to make this, and then he made it, and he didn't add any bloat.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly, I think, what... Maybe not what he envisioned when he set out to do it, but when I bought into that game, what it is now is what I expected to get at the end.
Does the
So I'm
story
happy.
show up in the game? Because I know there's a website where you can find out all about the girl you play in the game. Does that
There
ever...
is.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's not well implemented. You can go back to your house, and it's where you go to, like, sleep, and if you die, you automatically teleport back there. And inside your house, you get emails, and all the story is told through the emails, and then also there's these, like, capsules on the ground that you can find in new areas that were left by the previous owner of the thing. But I actually do like what they're doing with it. I just think it's presented really poorly. like, the writing itself is actually really, I would even say it's good. Like, it's not aspiring to tell some grand story.
Right.
Basically, as far as I could tell, there were like 2 or 3 storylines, and one is the guy who used to own the farm and finding out it's hardly even a storyline. It's more like a backstory that feels like a storyline because of how it's played out to you.
That's how it felt like just from the website.
Yeah. And his whole deal is like he was in love with a girl, and then somehow they became estranged, like she died or moved away or something, and he ended up alone on this planet, and so it's all just about like him slowly growing old. And the stuff that's like really close to your base is all his stuff that he left right before you showed up, and the farther out you go, you get like his older messages.
Oh, that's cool. I like when it's consistent like that.
Yeah, that was cool. And then also I think Lacey keeps emailing you, who's like your old friend from like the city world that you grew up on. And that's more of just like a character development thing. Like, you just learn more about this character, and she's kind of just an interesting person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't like say, oh, the story, that's why you play. Slime Rancher is ultimately a game that you're playing because
adorable slimes.
Adorable slimes. Yeah. And just like the sense of exploration is really real in that game, because if you haven't played through it before, you're like, every time there's a new slime, you're like, whoa, that's really interesting. That's really cool. And once you played through once, I think you lose a lot of that, because you lose that aspect. Now you know what the slimes look like, you know what they do, you know what the areas are laid out like.
A lot of games are like that.
I don't fault it for that, for being a directed experience.
Even games that say they have a lot of replayability just lose that immediate magic. Like, nothing's ever compared to the first time you play Skyrim.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, the first time you play Skyrim. Which is the go-to now, which I think is probably why that game can be re-released on every console, including your toaster, phone, and dog.
I will never play that game again.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it just dead for you?
Like, maybe just to look around. But, like...
It's an okay reason to play Skyrim, honestly. The game, with mods, looks good. It does.
Yeah. It's pretty. That's all I can give it nowadays. Like, it was magical when I first started because it was new, but now I see through the cracks of everything.
Yeah, now you're really acutely aware of what's wrong with it as a game.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is like, Skyrim did a lot of things right. Like, obviously, I don't think at this point that you could argue that Skyrim's a bad game. Like, you could argue that it has a lot of failures, and it does. And you could argue that there's a lot of problems with it, a lot of them technical in nature, that make it really hard to play, and just make it kind of clunky. But given the impact it's had, and given the time that almost everybody who comes across it puts into it, I don't think you can argue that Skyrim's a bad game.
Yeah. Have you played Just Cause?
I have not.
That game is so much fun. And with most of the Just Cause games, they release a multiplayer mod.
Yeah, which just got released for Just Cause 3.
Yeah! I have only played the second one, and I ended up playing the multiplayer mod for that for a long time, because it's crazy.
Yeah, it's what if we took GTA and made all that insane shit the core gameplay?
Yeah. And also there's a
grappling hook.
Grappling hook.
Which every game needs a grappling hook.
Yeah. A grappling hook or a parachute of some sort.
Parachutes are also good.
There was a long, argument that someone made on YouTube that was just every game should have a parachute. And it was made after Breath of the Wild came out. And it almost exclusively used that game as its argument, which I disagree with.
That's probably a bad way to form your argument. Hey, I want to make an all-inclusive argument, so I'm only going to use one data point as my core argument. And if somebody goes, hey, what if there's a game that's different than Breath of the Wild? Then fuck them.
But exploration games, I think, should have some form of interesting mobility.
Yeah.
Because, you're exploring, but you have to walk. Your main mechanic is doing something.
I would argue that jetpacks are cooler than parachutes.
I don't like jetpacks.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure you've just never seen one done well?
That's very possible. They always feel slow to me. Because it's kind of hovery.
Yeah. So you don't feel like you get a lot of vertical distance or horizontal distance. You just get a lot of vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grappling hooks are cool because you just shoot it out and you're forced into that direction.
You know what sort of had a good version of the jetpack for almost that exact reason? Super Mario Sunshine. Because it had the one that... Not the hover one, because the hover one's whatever, but the one that just shoots you straight up. That one's fun.
Yeah.
And actually does, like, kind of change the way you design the game, because suddenly you have to have a lot of stuff that's vertical.
Although that is really late game, getting that jetpack.
It is pretty late.
It's like 30 hours in.
It's not... Well, it might be. It's been a long time since the first time I played that game, so my, like, timings on it are probably not super accurate anymore.
Yeah, I played that maybe a couple years ago. When I first started up my Twitch channel, I started playing it.
It's good.
And, it holds up. It's super fucking hard in some places.
Yeah, I never beat it.
Yeah.
I got to a point where I couldn't progress any of the areas, and I was just like, well, that's unfortunate.
I got, like, as far as I needed to beat it on all of the worlds except one, because I couldn't do the clean up the manta ray.
Because you had bugs. Because that's a really buggy mission. I couldn't complete one of the races. The dude who races you. The one that's in the bay with the giant seashell. I think it's the place where you, like, give the eel dentistry. That area. There's a race in there that I could never finish.
Have you played Mario 64?
I've not.
I recommend it.
I mostly see it as, like, imagine Mario Sunshine, but with no FLUDD. And I'm like, those are kind of the worst levels of Mario Sunshine.
It's like that, but built around it. I find it more fun than Sunshine.
Yeah. And I just played Poi, so I'm kind of good on that kind of game for a while. Because I 100%ed that.
When you can start speedrunning it.
The speedrun has so much shit going on in it. It's really hard to get a good time because one of the finicky tricks is right at the end. And it's also like an hour. So I don't really want to speedrun that.
Gotcha.
And I kind of gave up on TAC until it gets shorter for kind of a similar reason. If I was going to speedrun something, and I do kind of want to speedrun something, I want something that I can learn fairly quick and then do a bunch. Which are neither of those games.
Alright. You heard about the new Crash Bandicoot, right?
Yeah, they're making another one. Is that the deal?
They re-released a bunch of them in a big old pack. Like, super nice, pretty graphics, whatever. And the top-selling game of the year in the UK.
Well.
Yeah. And it's doing really well here, too. So they're probably going to release another one.
Which is cool. It's a return to a style of game we haven't seen in, like, what, a decade?
Yeah. I mean...
from a big company.
It's not a really great style, I don't think. It's one-directional platforming. Which I didn't remember about the game, that you basically only run forward and jump.
I mean, that's how games used to be, but I don't know that that's a fair argument to continue having a game over. I'd like to see what they can do if they wanted to modernize the Crash format.
Well, the first thing they did is change the hitboxes.
Better or worse?
Ooh. So nowadays in modern games, hitboxes for players tend to be capsule shaped. Well, they'll have a round bottom so that you can go upstairs. Back in the day, they tended to be square shaped because it was easier and you just make a bunch of squares. The problem with this is you roll off shit in a precision-based platforming game.
Which we discussed last week or the week before.
So everyone's like super angry because it's way harder now. Like there's these turtles you jump on, and you have to like jump on them a bunch. But
their backs are a circle, and your feet are a circle.
You just fall off them sometimes.
Yeah,
it's kind of awful. Which seems like a really obvious oversight, but they seem to be content with it, like as a decision, because someone brought it up. Like a lot of people brought it up to them, and they're like, "It's fine. We intend for it to be like that way."
Maybe. Here's a weird, like, think piece on this. What if they were like, our target demographic is people who played this when they were kids, not necessarily kids nowadays.
Right.
So, those people have grown up since they were kids, and they remember this game being really hard.
Right.
But they're better at video games now. So, we have to make the game harder, proportional to how much better they are at video games, so that the game meets their expectation or their memory.
Yeah. It's a possibility. It just seems like that's a weird thing to change when it all comes down to it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen similar sorts of things happen, like the Ocarina of Time remake for 3DS.
Is that harder?
It's not harder, but it's first of all, they said they were recoding the game from the ground up, and they didn't at all. It's absolutely the same engine. A lot of the same bugs still work. It's very clear that they're still using...
They said that was an intentional design decision.
Yeah, they said that, but then they also changed other stuff that makes it clear that that's not really the case. Because they did patch out certain bugs, but they introduced new ones, which are obviously the result of them attempting to patch out bugs. But it just seems that, like, nowadays, when you re-release a game, people have issues just letting that lie. They feel like they can go back and fix things.
Yeah. I've never been a big fan of re-releasing something.
Sometimes I think it's necessary, like, when they re-released Grim Fandango, because there was literally no way to get Grim Fandango before they re-released it. If they re-released Fable 3 right now, I don't think anyone would fight them on that.
They re-released Fable 1.
That was years ago.
Yeah.
And that was mostly to coincide with the PC release, because that was the beginning of the PC version.
I played Armello a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't super happy with it.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a pretty okay game with some bad designs. And I've been reading up on it since, and I found that I'm kind of like the general consensus here. But I found out they did some really shitty things. Apparently, they released their game on GOG. So it was a anti-piracy free version of the game. But when they started releasing their updates to have microtransactions, they stopped updating entirely on GOG. And they came out and said, "Yeah, we're just not updating on this platform anymore."
Is that legal? That
Why not?
feels illegal.
The game's out.
I guess.
You got the product you paid for. Updating's a convenience.
It is. That is true.
It's a shitty thing to do.
It's really skeevy.
Yeah. Which, apparently, these developers do all sorts of obnoxiously skeevy things.
I guess you just don't expect that. Like, you expect that from somebody, like...
EA?
You expect that from someone like EA, but I guess, like, the art style of their game almost makes you feel like, oh, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't... Like, my first thought was, that's weird because they made a very pretty game. And then I was like, why does that thought make sense inside my head? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No, I totally get that. It strikes you as like a childish or like made to be happy kind of people.
Yeah.
But no, it's a company.
It's a
behind
company
that.
And they're apparently a little ruthless.
Yeah. Which sucks.
It does.
Like
well, at least you didn't buy it on GOG.
Yeah. I got it through fucking Humble Bundle, so they didn't get much of my money.
Yeah, that's true. If any.
I don't know how much
I assume
works.
they get a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get a little, I'm sure.
Did you get a chance to try out 2001: A Space Felony?
I didn't, and I talked about how I thought that was interesting. Maybe not on the podcast, but I definitely said it to you.
People keep saying it's interesting. I didn't get a chance either.
I almost played it, and then I was like, should I watch the movie before I play the game?
I'm not gonna.
Yeah, we'll see if I end up on that.
It seems like too much investment. I'm sure it's going to be playable without that.
Yeah, but I'm the kind of guy who, like... I'm going into that assuming, because it's based on 2001: A Space Odyssey, that it is going to be a very controlled thematic experience. That it's going to be something where the idea is that you're supposed to think about it on a deeper level. And as a result, I would like to have as much background information going in as I can that I feel like they expected me to know.
Alright, that's fair. What games have you been playing this week? Let's go back and forth again.
Well, the one that I was up to like 5 a.m. playing a couple nights ago was Civ 5.
Nice.
Because I told you that I had never beaten a Civ game.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I beat a Civ game.
Okay.
I mean, it's fun. I've played Civ before. I've just never finished a game before. What I did think was interesting, I was playing on a fairly easy difficulty because it was my first time through and I didn't know.
Right.
what I was if
No
I was going to get
excuses, it's fine.
stomped. Yeah. But as a result of that, I just ended up really far ahead, which I think was unfortunate. I would have rather... Now I'm playing again on a higher difficulty because I did end up way too far ahead. But I ended up pretty far ahead, and I was working on a diplomacy victory, and I just got a culture victory. Like, I was working on my diplomacy victory, and I was like, getting there, and I just got a pop-up that said I won. And I was like, okay, I was just kind of disappointed. It wasn't super clear why I won a culture victory. I think it has something to do with tourism.
Yeah, and landmarks.
Yeah, so that was weird. I would say that maybe I need more feedback in-game about how those things work. There are a lot of places in Civ 5 I will say that I wish there was mouse over text. There are places that have it, and it's good where it exists. I just wish that there was more of it.
Well, that's not the newest one, right? That's 6?
Civ 5 is not the newest. Civ 6 is.
From what I understand, 5 was the least polished. It's kind of like the 4E.
Which is weird. It feels very polished. 4E is the most polished of D&D. I don't know what you're talking about. 4E was the only D&D version with polish, and everyone hated it.
Have you seen those books? They're basically unreadable. It's like all over the fucking place.
I am aware that they are all over the place, but like in terms of mechanics, they're the only polished version of D&D.
I wouldn't consider copying and pasting the same mechanic like 8 times polish. Like, yeah, that one mechanic, hit things with a special flair, is super, like, you get what that does.
Yeah.
You don't need errata for hit things with a flair.
Well, actually they did, because they did end up errata-ing 4E, and, like, really hugely changing the game.
Yeah, what, they turned it into 3.5?
No.
Still not good.
3.5 isn't good. You know that. You play 5E.
I've been playing Pathfinder most recently.
Let's get back to this, because this actually touches into something I want to talk about later.
Alright, go back with Civ.
Civ is fun. Game is like
Addicting.
8 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good game. It's not like the best game.
My biggest problem with Civ games is, one, I don't feel like I should save in between, because, like, I feel like going back to an old save is cheating.
Yeah, I always tick on Iron Man whenever I play a game like that.
But I hate the idea of spending a couple of hours and then losing everything. It's like, I put so much investment into it, why should I play something that I'm not gonna win?
You don't like Dwarf Fortress. I like Dwarf Fortress.
I like
this
Dwarf
is not
Fortress,
an issue for
actually.
me.
And I don't get why I like Dwarf Fortress. Everything I know about games that I like does not fit within Dwarf Fortress. And I enjoy playing that game.
Yeah. It's fun.
It is. It shouldn't be.
RimWorld's better. Honestly, don't play Dwarf Fortress. If you want to play Dwarf Fortress, play RimWorld.
I have a hard time playing RimWorld compared to Dwarf Fortress.
Really?
Yeah, and I think I should have started with RimWorld and then gone to Dwarf Fortress. But now
I would agree with that most of the time, yeah.
Now that I've played Dwarf Fortress, and now that I've got like I don't want to say good...
You've got a passing understanding.
Yeah, but like when I can play and not constantly have to look at a wiki, I feel like because of all the options there, it's so much better for me.
Yeah. I just think that Dwarf Fortress just so needs to invest in UI. Like, give someone else the source code and let them do the UI. Just have a UI, please.
Yeah.
That's all it needs. If Dwarf Fortress added a UI tomorrow, it would be such a vastly better game than any game that would try to emulate it, that it would monopolize the space it exists in. As it is, because it doesn't have a UI, lots of games can spring up in that space.
Yeah.
Which is maybe good, but...
More competition.
More competition. Not that I think... Dwarf Fortress is one of the few situations where I think it doesn't need competition, because the developer's crazy enough that he'll just keep making stuff regardless.
But, like, having more options of games to play
is good.
It's always better.
Yeah.
Let's get... Okay.
What did you play? You want to get into D&D?
Yeah, I want to get into D&D.
Okay.
We were on that tangent.
Yeah.
So I played Pathfinder most recently, but we've also played 3.5, and we played
I've played
5e.
3.0.
Yeah, you DM'd us 3.0.
Yeah, I have played literally the least played version of D&D.
I really like all of the versions except for 4.
I like 4, and I have warmed up to 5 after our recent 5e campaign.
They're all so different to me. Like, just 3.5, 4, and 5.
They are very different.
Everything
games.
before 3.5 is 3 adjacent, I'd say.
Not necessarily. 2 is very different and very much its own game, and 1 is like just barely D&D.
I wouldn't say that either 3.5 or 5e are bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that a lot of people DM them wrong, where if you're using all of the errata, you're probably overloading something.
It's the same thing as, like, what source books should I use in GURPS?
Yeah.
Well, not all of them. Let's start there.
The last Pathfinder campaign I ran, I heavily restricted the classes that they could play.
Which I do now as, like, a matter of course.
I mean, I would have allowed someone to play something out of that if they asked.
If you have an idea and you can pitch it to me well, you can play whatever you want. But for broad strokes rules,
Yeah.
I am going to restrict a lot of what's going on.
But a lot of DMs... I just don't agree with rules-heavy play at all. It creates a situation where people are fighting against playing the game.
Yeah, which is never the point. It's probably why a lot of modern RPGs are heavily against that. And it's actually something that I think Pathfinder crusaded for when they said that, like, they wanted this more all-inclusive sort of player base.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, call 3.5 what you like, it's very much a bunch of grognards sitting in their basement. Like, that's not completely accurate, but it's by and large very true.
I think the big problem with 3.5 is the people who play it.
Yeah.
I've gone to a lot of game stores and I've played sessions. I've only ever played one campaign at a game store because I have the hardest time getting through it. Because the people who tend to play are the people who want to be the rules-heavy, like, rule lawyery types.
Yeah.
Which might be like a we can't find a group problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to bash on my own people here, but I've had a lot of experiences playing D&D in public.
Yeah, our group is really bad about finding places to meet, and our group is really bad about consistently showing up.
Yeah.
Which is shitty.
But, like, most of the times I've played with, like, a small group,
Mm-hmm.
or, like, a group of people I know, it's a good time. There needs to be, I think, some understanding and camaraderie. You have
to like really know your group. And I think the one you played through at a store, that was Tiggy's campaign, right?
I don't count that because that was Friends.
That was Friends. I was gonna say that.
I played
a different one.
I played a different one at a store over in Oahu.
I also played a game at our store here.
Mm-hmm.
I played a 5e campaign actually, and that one was different. It wasn't so much that people were rules heavy. It was more that a lot of the people were. It was obviously people who were a little socially anxious and were having trouble finding groups of friends to play with, so they just kind of had to go out and find randos. And I ended up in it because the store owner actually approached me to be an alternate DM when the DM couldn't show up because that was a sanctioned event. It was like one of the 5e, like, we're trying to get people to play our game events.
Mm-hmm.
And that game I ended up stopped showing up to because I didn't really like the player base. But, like, the DM openly didn't like any form of D&D and was obviously there as a favor to the store owner, which I think is another problem when people don't want to play your game at all.
Yeah. There's a level of comfort that comes with playing a role-playing game. Because you have to be able to role-play.
Yeah, you have to be able to get into character.
Even if your character is basically you need to be able to be comfortable
being you.
Yeah.
At the table.
Or at least have everyone be at the same level of uncomfort.
Yeah. That's...
But you don't get that when you're playing publicly.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I hope that, like... I've seen it a lot, being in college. There's a lot of smaller groups I've seen play, and they seem to be playing with their friends. And I think that's probably where the game should be.
Mm-hmm.
With people you at least know somewhat. It's also easier to judge expectations that way. Because when you go for the bare, like, most common denominator of expectations with D&D, you get the rule books.
Yeah. So, on this note, because this is not why we got into this, but I think a good transition, Starfinder is coming out.
What's that?
So, Pathfinder, Paizo, the company that made Pathfinder, is making... Okay, how do I preface this? way the hell back towards the beginning of 3.5, there was a errata released called Spelljammer, which was a space opera sort of extension on D&D,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like baked into their core world, like Sigil, which is like the big city, the big like multiverse city in D&D 3.5's like standard world, exists in Spelljammer, and it's now just like a spaceport. And it was really weird, and it was quirky, and a lot of people really, really liked it because it blended the traditional D&D high fantasy with sci-fi, which is like, that's a gimme audience, because sci-fi and fantasy is such a huge overlap. So now, Paizo is doing the same thing for Pathfinder. They're creating Starfinder, which is their Spelljammer for Pathfinder. But they're releasing it as a new product line, which means it's got its own core rulebook.
Right.
Which means they're doing basically Starfinder is functionally Pathfinder 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
They've been wanting to do... Well, a lot of the people inside the company have been wanting to do that for a long time, but Paizo's been fighting against them.
Right. So, a couple of years ago, Sean K. Reynolds, who was one of the lead designers for Paizo and Pathfinder for a long time, left the company. And Sean K. Reynolds was known, during his tenure at Paizo, by the community for being insane. Just specifically, there's a conversation that I know you're aware of, where he said throwing weapons shouldn't be effective, because if you want throwing weapons to be effective, you're functionally arguing for water balloons to be an effective weapon. Which is not a, sensible, But when he left the company, he went back and basically said, most of the crazy shit I said while I was working for Paizo was because Paizo has an internal rule that says that you're not allowed to admit fault with the game. So, he was like, here's what I actually think about a lot of these stuff, and people realized that he was actually a fairly competent designer who was kind of holding things together by his teeth.
I get where that rule comes from.
As a company, it makes sense. I don't blame him for it.
Not as even, a general company, as a D&D style company.
Mm-hmm.
These people are generally kind of vicious, especially the forum people.
Yeah.
About fighting over rules. A company like that admitting they were wrong is just gonna start flame wars.
Yeah. And they released errata for things, but it was ultimately their errata was also really fundamentally flawed and wishy-washy. And what Sean K. Reynolds said ultimately when he came out of Paizo was one of the big reasons I left was because I wanted to make a second version. He wanted to make a second version because he felt like Pathfinder was too D&D 3.5. They'd reimagined D&D 3.5 in a way that they felt better about, but ultimately they made a few mistakes along the way, and they were kind of core to the game now and couldn't be fixed, which is why you end up with situations where the Unchained Rogue is not really mechanically that different from the normal rogue. It's just a better version of the normal rogue, and it's still nowhere near as good as it needs to be to fix that class.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said he wanted to do Pathfinder 2, and Paizo basically said, no, we can't butcher the player base like 3.5 did by making a new version. So, years later, we have Starfinder, because it's not aiming at the exact same audience. I think they're more willing to split that. So, I have a collected PDF of all the changes, and I'm not going to go through all of them.
Yeah.
But I want to get your opinion on
cool,
some of the
I totally want to bitch about this stuff. As much as I say that Flame Wars start, I love bitching about mechanics.
So, they're changing the health system.
Okay. To what?
You still have hit points,
mm-hmm.
but now you also have stamina and resolve. The way that this works is that stamina is, I believe stamina is also used for abilities, certain abilities. Like fighters might use stamina to do some feat of combat prowess.
Mm-hmm.
But the primary purpose of stamina is before you take damage to your health, you take damage to your stamina. And then you have these resolve points, which are kind of they're more similar to surges in 4E, if you remember those.
Yeah.
where you can use Resolve to refill your stamina. So the idea is that, and also Resolve is a mechanic for other things, like you can expend it to perform certain actions and stuff like that. So the idea is that over the course of battle, as you lose stamina, you can spend Resolve, which is inherently the loss of the use of another ability. And that balances HP more because it means that you can have wounds that have permanent effects, but you don't automatically apply them anytime you take damage. You have to burn through this buffer first. How do you feel about that as a change?
This isn't where I thought you were going with that. But I played Dresden Files RPG for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got kind of a similar idea.
A lot of systems have a similar idea.
But I don't necessarily like how that was described to me.
I'm sure it could be described better.
Because it seems like once you find the most efficient way of, like, burning through your stamina and doing that, it's just going to become health with extra steps.
Efficient way, you mean in terms of...
Because, like, you're making the conscious decision to take your resolve out and put it back into your stamina, right?
Right.
So once you get that, the most efficient way of, like, putting that into your stamina, like, figuring out when the right time is, it's just health with, like... It seems like a better idea would have been to have, like, a permanent health and, like, a temporary health.
Oh,
like, maybe two of these things.
I have the answer to that. In order to spend a resolve point to recover your stamina, it's a 10-minute rest. You can't do it in battle, I guess.
It's short resting with extra steps.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay.
I like the idea of having multiple, like, having a temporary damage system.
Mm-hmm.
In Dresden Files, you've got, circles. It's a fate-based system of health. And, like, there's minor wounds, major wounds, and, like, an even bigger wound. And, like, minor wounds are like a scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes, like, a day to get past those, or, like, 5 minutes if you got a healing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then major wounds are like an arm! And you never get that back. And I think that's perfect. It adds to roleplay opportunities, it changes the way you play and the way you want to take damage, and I think it's more realistic. So I like that idea. I don't like the way they seem to have structured the 3 health bars.
Okay. Armor class is now kinetic AC and energy AC.
Okay.
Which is basically dividing armor class into magic and energy weapon damage versus normal weapon damage.
I'm surprised they're not making AC damage reduction, because a lot of people have been wanting that for a long time.
Yeah. No, it's the same as before. It's just now 2 different values, which I think it's better than the previous system, because one of the issues with magic has always been that there's not really a good way to defend against it that's consistent.
I haven't watched, or I haven't read all of these rules through all the way. But just knowing Pathfinder was kind of bloated already, and it seems like they're adding a lot of new rules.
They're also stripping stuff out. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay. Then the only reason I would disapprove of having these 2 ACs is if it's too much bloat. I love the idea of having 2 different kinds. If it was a video game, you'd want like 6 different kinds, but you just can't do that many, or expect a player to remember that many things.
They have simplified attacks of opportunity.
Thank fucking God.
There are only 3 things, and this is saying only 3 things
for now.
In the entire game that trigger attack of opportunity. Moving out of a threatened square, making a range attack in melee, or casting a spell in melee. Supposedly those will be the only thing that trigger attack of opportunity.
That's like all I use anyway, so that's fine.
Yeah.
No one ever remembers anything else.
Grappling, technically.
Yeah.
Auto fire, which is based on... so carry weight is different now.
Is it still annoying?
Instead of doing carry weight, you have bulk, which is similarly based on your strength, but only heavy objects have bulk.
Dope.
So
Love
your
it.
light objects
Love
don't have
it.
to be accounted for anymore.
That is my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
I fucking hated when I had like 8 bags of marbles and I had to figure out
How much they weigh.
I don't even make my players deal with it unless it's super heavy or they're super low on strength, because it's not worth it. No one wants to sit there and like recalculate out everything they've got.
Yeah, so now it's just, I assume, weapons and equipment.
Yeah.
And everything else is...
I don't even do weapons unless it's like a giant weapon.
I think, yeah, it seems to be implying that, like, a rifle is like one bulk, which should be negligible, but like something bigger might not necessarily be negligible, and you might have to give up other stuff.
Like, technically, gold's supposed to have a weight, too. And fuck doing that.
Combat maneuvers have been reduced to an attack roll.
If it's got the feats to back it, I'm down with it.
Yeah, I like that, too.
As long as it's not just, like, attack roll, okay, now I'm stuck. There should be, like, creative ways to do it. Because that's what I go to Pathfinder for.
It doesn't say necessarily about grappling. It's using Bull Rush as an example here, which is something that you never really had a defense against anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know if grappling will be like, you just are immediately grappled. I have a feeling that's going to be opposed attack checks, which...
Which it is in 5e, and it works out really well.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Critical hits now double all damage.
My players get so mad when I tell them spells don't double.
Don't double.
And like, it's really a bummer because, like, everyone gets so excited about 20s except the spellcaster.
Yeah.
It's just taking away fun that everyone else in the party gets to have.
Most things now also inflict a special condition
Woo!
when you crit. And some of its examples are burn, corrode, knockdown, deafen, bleed.
I love it.
Or there's a wound system now, so you can get wounds.
I love it.
Damage scaling on all weapons.
Eh.
So they scale like spells now.
Okay.
So that spellcasters aren't like far and ahead the best damage source late game.
Yeah. That's just kind of the throwaway. I could take it or leave it.
They stripped out the +1, +2 bonuses on magical stuff. So now they just have the effect.
I never used... I mean, occasionally I use those, but it's so boring. It comes down to, like, rules people again.
Yeah.
Rules people love giving out +1 weapons.
Well, no, because, technically, in Pathfinder,
Yeah.
if you get a flaming weapon, it's a +1 flaming
Yeah.
weapon. Now it's just a flaming weapon.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
I hate anything that's a static bonus, because it's not creative.
Yeah.
And players can't do creative things knowing they have a +1 to something.
They changed the way that attacking works. So, you don't get bonus attacks for your base attack bonus anymore. And wielding additional weapons doesn't give you additional attacks. It just gives you more options as to what to attack with. You get 1 attack per round unless you make a full attack action, which is 2 attacks.
That's kind of a bummer. Because I didn't often play 2 weapon fighters.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there should be a bonus to people who put so much time into figuring that out.
Well, now it's easier. Now it's just, you don't even need a feat.
But, like, why even bother having 2 weapons if you can have 1 weapon in an open hand?
True. Well, because there's a race with 4 arms now. That's in core.
Oh. Well, then it wouldn't even matter if you have 2 weapons versus 4 weapons. You only get 2 attacks anyway.
Right, but the idea is now they can have 2 weapons and 2 open hands. I think their argument is, like, you have an energy weapon and a physical weapon. So you can change because people might have energy AC or physical AC.
I'm not a big fan of that one.
Yeah. Iterative attack. Saving throws are the same. Skill points the same. Those are the primary mechanics changes of Starfinder that I can see, that they've announced so far.
I have yet to find a system that I, like, just straight up hate.
Mm-hmm.
They're all... 4E. Never mind. I lied.
You hate 4E.
I hate 4E. Because it's...
I bet you I could show you a system you hate. I have a lot of systems saved.
I try and... I like things that give my players something interesting to do.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow within the system.
Mm-hmm.
5e basically lets them get away with anything. 3.5 and Pathfinder let them have creative builds, where they feel like they can actually get super deep into their characters.
Mm-hmm.
4e, I don't know what to tell you. It's everyone's the same, and there's no creative roleplay opportunities. Also, there's no ability you have that works out of combat. But
are there even rogues in 4E?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do?
Same thing everyone else does.
Interesting. I'll have to go look at my 4E book I have at home.
Every 3 levels you get a utility ability.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember utility abilities. Yeah.
Blowing my fucking brains out. You know what game I played this week?
What game did you play this week?
I think it's called Floppy Teddy Mountain Adventure.
Ah! Yes! That breakout hit of last year, Floppy Teddy Mountain Adventure.
I was so angry at playing at Atelier Sophie that I wanted to play something different.
Fluffy?
And That was the most different I could get. And it's a point-and-click adventure made for children in the style of, like, Putt-Putt, the car.
Okay.
But with, like, a 3D, like, PBS-style animation. And...
Wait, so it looks like, God, what is it called? The old PBS cartoon that taught you grammar and shit?
Yeah.
Schoolhouse Rock?
No. Worse.
No? Worse. Okay.
And I don't want to say it's a bad game. I'm going to say it's an okay game. It's not Putt-Putt levels of quality.
Quality.
Hey, for a kid's game, that game has a lot of shit.
KWA. Quality.
But I'm about to bitch a lot about it for a game that I thought was okay.
I mean, that might be an issue with you, because if I played a game called Fluffy Teddy's Mountain Adventure or whatever the fuck, I would expect it to be bad. And if it was bad, I wouldn't blame the game. I would blame myself for playing it.
It's perfectly manageable as a game, but, like, you know when you watch something on loop for, like, a long time, and then it just digs into your skull and it's all you can think about, and you get really angry about it?
No, I don't watch things on loop for that long.
Yeah, well, I played Mountain Teddy's Putt-Putt Adventure.
Sure, yeah. Hey, so if anybody's looking up this game, how are they gonna find it?
Fucking don't. I got a bundle a while back with like 8 of these games in it, and so I didn't finish it, which is a disappointment because I got real close to the end and then it crashed.
Oh,
yeah, and I don't know if it saves. I didn't have the heart to check.
Yeah, it'd be hard to go back and be like,
So the first thing you notice in this game is that everyone talks like this, Teddy. But their mouths flap like crazy. Like, it's just, like, you know that thing people do when they're trying to clap really fast?
So they're all the Canadians from South Park?
Faster. It's
Faster.
seriously like... But
Jeez.
they're talking like this. Everything's
strange.
unskippable.
That feels like an engine bug.
I don't know. The mouth movement is, like, their animation's pretty good, except the mouth movement, which looks like a triangle. Yeah, it's really strange. It's like everything solid quality except the mouth.
Weird.
Well,
I mean, lip syncing is generally the last pass in editing and animation, so I wonder if
yeah,
the lip syncer was just really shitty at his job.
There's no sync at all. It's straight up just...
Huh.
It's mouth masturbation.
Maybe the lip syncer had a heart attack, and they had someone else do it, and they didn't know, so they were just like, it just moves.
The weirdest quirk I found out about this game is you have to talk to people twice. Like, you talk to people, and they vaguely tell you what you should do, and then you talk to them again, and you get the quest to do it. Or,
It's
like, you'll
just
get
really
the
poor
item.
design.
It's really poor design. You walk super slow. It's a kid's game. They always tell you explicitly where to go, and that's nice. It's a learning game, so you get, like, neat little mini-games, which I thought were the best part of this game. Every once in a while, you get, like, a weird-ass mini-game that's like, grade these colors. Put these leaves going from yellow to red. And I'm like, okay, that's cute. And it's like, this is a bug. And I'm like, yep. There's one game where there's like, tell us if this statement is true or false. Blue banana. And there's a picture of a green banana. And I put false. And it's like, wrong. I'm like, what? And then it's like, red apple. And it's like a red house. And I'm like, okay, wrong. Right. It turned out it only mattered what the shape was, but they never told you that.
Oh.
For no apparent reason.
That's really strange.
The characters in it are kind of enjoyable if you can get past the fact that they talk at half speed.
Yeah.
They're all kind of interesting. There's like mini games where you like pull trash and sort it into the right places, and that's kind of fun. I don't know. It's a solid kids game, but Jesus Christ, if I felt like I was taking crazy pills. It's like everything's in slow motion, and you actually kind of get sucked into this thing that's happening, and the world just stops existing around you, and you live in fucking Teddy's world now.
I feel like...
I probably also shouldn't have played this at like 2 a.m.
Also, maybe, like... I don't know. It's just very strange that you're so critical about a game that so obviously doesn't warrant it.
I liked it. I had a good
enough.
time until it fucking crashed right before the fucking end. I was so salty.
I had that issue with Antichamber.
That's a game I expected.
I have gotten to the end of Antichamber. I have no idea what happens at the end.
Oh.
because the game crashed. So I know everything, well, pretty much everything in that game. I'm sure there's shit I missed because it's Antichamber. But I know pretty much that entire game, and I do not know what the end is.
Just Google it. Or just leave it a mystery. It's probably better in the end.
Probably.
But in like 3 weeks, you're going to hear, so I just played Teddy's kayak adventure.
Is there a sequel?
There's like 8 games. I own them all.
No. Well,
they're all only like an hour long. And most of it's listening to the unskippable talking.
Yeah. Hey, at least you can't die and go back to before the previous cutscene.
There was one part that I thought was kind of weird. You get there's a cable car. And you get 2 tickets to go on it after you do some quest to do. I don't fucking know. I think you have to get eagle glasses that you find while going through the trash. That was another weird thing. Every weird scene had something you had to go back for. But, like, it wasn't like at the end of the game you have to go back for it. It's like, you do a thing and there's like an object there that it's kind of obvious that it sticks out. And then you go to the next thing and they're like, oh, we need this object. And they're like, where have I seen that before?
Yeah.
And you have to walk back, super slow walk cycle, and then walk back, and then there. But you get these cable car tickets, and you only get 2 of them. And I'm wondering, like, I really wanted to get myself stuck.
If you wasted them, what would happen?
Yeah.
Kind of like the bug in the original Pokemon games where you could spend all your gold and be unable to get the lemonade, so you couldn't open the path into Saffron.
Yeah. I really wanted to see what would happen if I got stuck, which it'd probably, knowing the quality control in this game, be like,
you're stuck.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do to get out of there.
I know that they partially fixed that in
Silver?
No, there was a. Oh yeah, there's a museum you have to go to in one of the Pokemon games.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no money, they're just like, "Oh, you're poor. I
Oh,
guess we'll let
Ruby!
you in."
Yeah.
They just let you in for free, and that was their get around for that.
I'm really sad. In Fire Red, they had, and Diamond, I think, they had a trainer rebattler.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go back and rebattle trainers, and I'm sad that doesn't exist anymore.
It's a really good tool. I always used it.
Yeah.
It's great.
I thought it just brought more replayability to the game.
It totally did. Especially since most of the time, I think, especially in Platinum, I think was the one that did it crazy. I think every single trainer in the game, excepting like 3, had entire teams for multiple rebattles.
I know in Silver you get calls sometimes.
Yeah, and they would usually level up and sometimes evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's weird that they took that all out, though. Now the only thing you get is like those battle houses.
Yeah, which, I mean, the one in Platinum was particularly bad because you can only do it once a day.
X and Y was fine, if nothing to write home about.
Yeah. That encapsulates X and Y pretty well for me.
I liked it.
Fine, but nothing to write home about. It's a good game. It's not the best Pokemon game.
Yeah. So what other games have you played?
I started playing Fallout New Vegas again.
And?
I got this mod, and it's a mod that just came out, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's an overhaul that the guy attests on his Nexus page that he did some, like, you know, intermediate, like, low-level snooping, and is pretty sure that it is the largest mod for Fallout ever made by a single person.
Is it good?
It is good. He said it took him 4 years to make.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Too much time. It's
an overhaul that changes basically the entire game. Like, there are a lot of overhaul mods for Bethesda games that change the entire game, but most of them have fairly large teams behind them. This is one dude. And the overhaul is probably my favorite Fallout New Vegas overhaul.
Mm-hmm.
It's based around the idea that, like, it's a role-playing game, not a shooter. Which most Fallout mods kind of forget. They're like, we'll just make it a better shooter. Which is one way to make that game better.
Yeah.
But I prefer that. So, like, if I aim down sights with my pistol right now, it just waves all over the place. I'm never going to land any kind of shot. So you have to use VATS for the most part. When it first started me, I had a pistol, 10 rounds of ammunition, and some shitty armor. And, like, 2 bottles of water. And I'm pretty much there. I have some meat and some more ammo now.
How long have you played?
That's about 3 hours of gameplay.
Oh, fuck.
But I love it because the whole time, one, they've turned down the time scale, which is a very small change that makes the game feel a lot better. Because the game asks you to play it in hardcore mode. It's like, we understand that you might not want to, but we want you to use the hardcore mode, which in Fallout New Vegas makes it so you have to eat and drink.
Right.
But because it's made money so scarce, it's like getting food and water is a struggle.
Yeah, there's always been a problem with Fallout games where hardcore mode only matters for like the first hour.
This doesn't feel like that. Like, I feel like hardcore mode still matters. It has an alternate start built in, and I ended up accidentally randomizing it by hitting the wrong button.
Ooh.
But it dropped me right in New Vegas, which is that's like the perfect starting point for that game. I actually think it's the start I got is, I think, better than the vanilla start for New Vegas, because Vegas is where all the cool shit is in that game.
I'll be honest, I felt like the second I got to New Vegas, that game died for me.
Really?
Yeah.
New Vegas is where that game like picks up.
I feel like that's the high point of that game, and once you get there and you realize it's kind of disappointing, it's like, and everything after this is a disappointment.
But so I've been doing that, and I've been mostly doing like talking to people quests. The timescale thing really helped because I got a quest that was like, go to this place at midnight.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'll go there at midnight. And I was thinking about waiting, and then I was like, if I wait, I'm going to waste, like, it's like 10 a.m. I'm going to waste, like, 12 hours of food and water. I can't afford to do that. So I just went and did other stuff until midnight and came back, which is something I never would have done in an Elder Scrolls game. No. Otherwise, you'd always just wait. And it put me on a timer. Like, while I was doing other stuff, I was like looking at the time, like, okay, how much time do I have left to finish this? And, like, making sure I'd get back in time, which was interesting and something that, like, I don't think I've ever done in a Bethesda game before.
Yeah, that's cool.
And something that I did that I've never done in a Fallout game before, I ended up in an old robotics factory. I was scrapping things. I was, like, looking through and, like, doing the whole... You know how there are always, like, scrappers and prospectors running around in Fallout world? Like, yeah, I'm picking through all this old junk looking for stuff to sell. Which you're always like, huh, poor people. I actually had to scrap shit for money. And it felt very Fallout.
I've been playing Fallout 4 this week. And I had a very similar experience to that. I wasn't playing hardcore mode, but I did actually find myself physically going out for scrap just for money, for something I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think I got the same feeling as you, if a little less hardcore.
Yeah. That said, the mod I'm playing, I think... I'm not sure how well it's going to scale, right? I'm afraid that as I get later in the game, either it's going to go back to being, you are the badass of the wasteland who has way too much money, or I'm always going to feel like shit. And there's a happy medium in there. I really think there is.
You think?
Where you're, like, still afraid of death, but small things aren't an issue anymore. Where, like, maybe I just have, like...
modded Minecraft style.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, middle of modded Minecraft,
not late game modded Minecraft, where it's like, I fly and I'm immortal. Give me money.
Alright. Yeah, so I said I played Fallout 4 a little this week. Yeah. I haven't gotten far enough to get to the DLC yet.
Yeah.
Because it takes a while.
I'm also still playing Fallout 4, like, vaguely. I need to go back and finish some final quests, but yeah. I'm
level 20, I think, so I'm getting there.
20. You're getting there, yeah.
But I tried to play a little bit differently. I'm going with different companions than I normally go with. Right now, I've gotten to one of the DLCs. I've got the companion from... Automaton.
So you have Ada.
Ada.
Yeah.
She's okay.
I never used her as a companion.
She's a quest thing.
Yeah.
But it's something different. And I'm playing kind of... I don't say evil, but like asshole.
Yeah, I did that too.
Like... care for myself, which kind of sucked because all the early game companions hate you for it.
Pretty much all the I think the only companions who like you for that are like Strong.
Dogmeat doesn't care.
Dogmeat doesn't care. What's McCready and Hancock.
Yeah.
And other than that, you're kind of screwed if you have evil tendencies.
But I was starting to get really critical of the game. because it's like when you played a Bethesda game that much, you start seeing the same things over and over, like Skyrim.
Like you were saying, Skyrim, it's a good game, but it has a lot of flaws.
And then I found something I'd never seen before, and I was convinced it was a mod that was really well done.
Uh-huh.
And then it wasn't, because I looked it up, and I'm like, oh!
What is it?
Vault 75.
I went through there. I didn't see anything.
I really like the story of it.
Yeah, there is a story to that, isn't there?
Yeah. That's the one under a middle school.
Oh, the one where they killed all the parents.
And they're basically doing eugenics.
Yes, right. I do remember that one. Never mind.
Yeah, I really like that one. And the map was really interesting, too, because as you get to the end of the vault, they've got a underground kind of city going on. It's in a cave outside of the vault that you can, like, look into, and then you get into it, and it's got, like, a little saloon.
So kind of like Little Lamplight or the Ghoul Vault from Fallout.
Yeah, but I wasn't expecting it.
Okay.
Because I saw it and I thought this is going to be a generic vault, and it feels like it until you get, like, there, and you're like, oh.
Something's going on here.
Which is neat.
So here's something I did. I was having trouble finding new content in Fallout 4, which is like, this is weird. Normally, I can find some new content in most Bethesda games, because there's so much. So I actually went and looked up a list of all the quests in Fallout 4. I've done pretty much everything now. Which I was sad to find that out. That was really disheartening.
Yeah.
Especially since the odds of quest mods for that being any good, pretty much nil.
I found one, and it just uses standard, like, random clips from other things. Most of the things you end up saying are like, yep or no. Yeah. Which didn't take me out as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, I feel like that would take me out a lot, but I haven't tried it.
It worked out pretty well. Like, there was enough variations of yeah or no, or, like, very specific things they say that can actually work into other conversations. Yeah. Like, a good writer can make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's my issue, is as a writer, it would just hurt me to try and butcher dialogue for parts like that. I'd be like, but that doesn't belong here, or, like, I'd prefer if they used a different word.
Yeah. That's the Fallout we live with now.
It is, unfortunately.
Which, it's fine. If you just take it for a game and not for a modded thing.
Yeah, which, it's rough as a Bethesda game to say, like, we're gonna block out this entire realm of modding.
Well, with Skyrim, they already showed that, like, Xbox was the main place for the game. Like, with the UI and everything. Yeah. They're just getting closer and closer to the console.
Which is so unfortunate.
Yeah.
Which, now that consoles have mods, I have less of a problem with. Like, that was always my thing, as I was like, why would they optimize Skyrim for console when it doesn't have mods? Even though they know that that's, like, such a huge part of the community. And now that consoles have mods, I don't have that issue anymore. Yeah. I wish that Sony would be a little more open about how mods are allowed to work.
Yeah, but Sony's always kind of
Sony's
weird.
Always like that. And you can play it on Xbox. So, fuck Sony.
Hey, PlayStation's doing better than Xbox.
Yeah, and they are.
Yeah. Alright, that's all I got to talk about.
Did I play anything else? No, we went over Starfinder. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else either.
These will be up on YouTube, and see you in 3 weeks.
Although there won't be a gap in content, right?
On YouTube.
On YouTube,
Twitch,
there will not be a gap in content. Okay. Yep. Few weeks. We'll be back.
Bye-bye.
Bye.